Well, welcome to this week's update. It's Tuesday, May 11th. And what we want to talk about today is a little bit about where we're at in the crop progress, but more importantly, where we're going, what we need to be thinking about in the upcoming week to 2 weeks. So I believe the report yesterday said we were about 80% planted on corn. We're in that 40+% range on soybeans. We're standing in Central City at our owner's acres field. You'll see this is where we planted our beans ahead of our corn. We actually did that on all owners' acres this year, and we did this into terminated rye. We also have some other scenarios at some of our other owners' acres sites. But what I want to talk about is where we're at on these soybeans. Obviously, the first things you see come out of the ground are the cotyledons as they open up, and then we've got our first true leaves or unifoliate leaves out here. And now, ideally, as you see the tip here, we'll be starting to put out a trifoliate every, say, 5 to 7 days. So as you look ahead, we'll start hitting that first trifoliate or V1 stage here in the next week, and then you can basically add on to that. So sometime in the next 10 to 17 days, we could be hitting that V3 stage, and that's where we start talking about putting on some of our PGRs. We have Realize that helps us stimulate some branching, try to get some lateral branching where we can get some branches where we can set some soybeans, and then also pushing some micronutrients to these plants just to make sure, as you can see, they don't have much of a root system on them. So a little foliar feed micronutrient pack just to get them by for a little bit until their root system can get developed and they can start pulling some of these nutrients from the soil. So as you look ahead, we need to be thinking about that here coming up in the next 14, 17 days and being ready to have that in place and execute that management strategy. So looking at corn, now's the time to get out, dig around in your fields. We have some various stages out there already. Anything planted in that 23rd of April kind of range, maybe a few days before that, a day or two after, is pretty well out of the ground. Most of our first round of flag tests are wrapping up. But when we look at the corn plant around that 1st of May, then what we have is just basically starting to merge. I believe this field was about May 1st planting date. And we're just starting to get it right here poking at the surface. Hopefully with the warm weather in the next couple days, we see this starting to emerge. A couple things you can learn by digging. Just happened to be out in this field, and I notice we have some sidewall compaction. You'll see the first lateral roots here starting to come out or kind of running down that furrow, which would indicate a little bit of sidewall compaction. You also notice on this plant here, it started running down the furrow for about a ½ inch before it started shooting up. And, less than ideal, but with some of the wetter conditions, I expect to see a little bit of this. And so if you see some uniformity issues in your emergence, sometimes it can be just so we had some plants that maybe spent a little time going sideways before they started coming up. Also with a little cooler weather, fortunately, we've held our soil temperatures, so I don't anticipate seeing a whole lot of issues with corkscrewing. Ideally, we like to see that shoot come straight out of the plant and go straight up, not get any S-curves or hooks in it. And for the most part, everything I've dug up this season has looked really good. We'll see what happens with these last 2 cool nights, but ideally we'll be, we've kept those soil temperatures in the upper 40s into the 50s, so we'll avoid most of those problems, I believe, especially if we can get warmed up here tomorrow. So for those of you with corn out of the ground now, we need to look ahead as we look at our GDU forecast this next 10 days. We get through today into the latter part of the week, we're starting to get that 10 to 12, 15 GDUs per day, which means, we'll rack up 120, 150 GDUs in 10 days. Kind of the first growth stages happen about 70 to 80 GDUs apart. So, within 10 to 14 days, we could be looking at V2, V3 corn for a lot of you. So that means we need to start thinking about our treatments as far as, what are we looking at for micronutrients? Are we looking at a PGR? All things that we've talked about in the past and will continue to do this year on owners' acres. Also, keep in mind your herbicide applications. We're at 120 to 180 GDUs on emerged corn. You start throwing another 120 on top of that. Now you're starting to get into that stage where we want to make sure we get our herbicides on and early post treatments, and try to keep the weeds spraying when they're small, and also make sure that corn plant's still small while it's trying to metabolize your herbicide applications. The later we wait, the more chance of injury to the corn, also the harder it is to control weeds. So use those residuals, knock those weeds down while they're still small. Don't let things get out of control. Obviously there's a lot of rain kind of kicking in and out of the forecast. Seems like one of those years, so be ready when those windows hit to attack those fields and get things done on time.